It's Clarence Darrow. He's gonna do that. That's what he does. Okay, is everybody still here?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna do the intro before everything explodes again. Hi, everybody.
Okay.
You're listening to the Triad where we're spooky but sensitive. I'm Shannon.
I'm Shelby.
Oh, I'm Hannah.
Oh, no.
There we are. Hannah! I thought there was something
It
wrong.
wasn't as late as you think it is. I think there's a lag.
Okay. Oh, this is gonna be fun. Okay, do we have any announcements?
I got a new computer that isn't trash, but now everything else is trash.
Yeah, she got a new computer, but she's at her parents' house where the internet is being a butt, so
Yeah.
that's great.
Also, Yuki drew blood like 4 times last night because she's mad at me. Because,
Yeah.
I put her by a kitten that she hates.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Mine is that I've had bronchitis for about a week. I think I sound
also
weird.
that.
Yeah, Shelby's also sick, but not with bronchitis. But this week, y'all, if you have a roommate, don't both get sick at the same time, because everything collapses around you if that happens.
Yeah, we were so useless this week.
It's terrible. Yeah, so I think I sound weird. I don't know if I actually do, but
No,
yeah.
you sound relatively normal.
Yeah, it'll get worse the more I talk, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Huna, do you have any announcements?
No.
You don't have to. Okay.
I
Just
thought I had
checking.
one, but now I can't remember. Oh, I'm gonna go see the Nutcracker tomorrow.
Yay!
Oh, fun.
Also, I tried to get a friggin' COVID shot this week.
Yeah.
A booster. And I was on like 15 different websites from the government, like that find a vaccine, find a vax, whatever government thing. And I like went through hell and back trying to find one, finally got an appointment. I waited and got the confirmation email and I looked at it and it said your pediatric 5 to 11-year-old vaccine appointment is scheduled for tomorrow at 9:45. So needless to say,
Yeah.
I'm not getting a
Yep.
booster shot because I got the wrong friggin' one.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
they
gonna...
certainly don't make it easy.
No. Yeah, I was gonna sign up for a booster, but bronchitis kinda took precedent over that this week.
Yeah,
so.
she already can't breathe, so
It's
we're
better
not
today.
gonna mess with that.
Yeah, I got it from my sister because she showed up to Thanksgiving sick.
Yay.
Yeah. Allie also has bronchitis.
Yeah, I think I just got a cold, because
Yeah.
mine never got as bad as Shannon's.
Yeah.
And I'm basically over it now. Like, I still have a sore throat, but not nearly as bad.
I can tell I still have a few days with this,
Yeah.
but it's a lot better. So. Okay. Well, if we don't have anything else, we can move on to the topic.
Okay.
It's in the episode. What episode is this? Good lord, it's episode
75.
75. It's in the episode 75 folder. I technically told y'all last time, but we recorded like 2 or 3 weeks ago, so I don't know if you remember.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
hip hip hooray. I mean, not really.
You know,
but like...
I vaguely recall you saying this. Maybe.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Look, it's been a rough 2 weeks.
It has. It really has. Okay.
Okay.
So we are talking about the Pinkerton Detective Agency today.
Woohoo!
For my
Or
sources.
something.
Whoa. Did someone say something?
Oh, I just said woohoo or something.
Okay. So my sources, I think I have like 4 different Wikipedia articles. I have an article from Teen Vogue, which was very good.
What?
Look, sometimes they have good articles.
Teen Vogue, like, I remember back right after Trump got elected, they were like on the forefront of like really hard-hitting like political analysis.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know
like-
they do that, but, like, for this?
Right?
We'll get into it. There's a reason why they wrote an article about this. We'll get into it, like, at the very, very end.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I have something from the Smithsonian Mag, Legends of America, the History Channel, PBS, the Washington Post, Women History blog. I feel like that should be Women's History blog, but whatever. And then a Vice article, which that is related to the same incident as was covered in Teen Vogue. So, for people who don't know, the Pinkerton Agency was one of the first private detective agencies in the United States, and therefore kind of in the world. So we're going to be going over, like, the basic history of the agency. There are a few events that they were involved in that I'll dig into a little bit more, but I wanted to keep this generalized to try to cover as much as I can. I'm also going to try to keep this in chronological order, but there are some sections that made more sense to organize by topic rather than time, so we do jump around a little bit, but I tell you what year everything happened, so try to keep us on as chronological as I can. So, the founder / the beginning. So, the agency was founded in the 1850s by a man named Alan Pinkerton. And if you can go to slide 2, that is Alan Pinkerton. He had been born in Scotland in 1819 and immigrated to the U.S. in 1842. He settled in the Chicago area and worked as a barrel maker. The official term for that is a cooper, by the way.
Good to know.
It was brought up in, like, every source, so I figured I may as well throw it in here.
Well, I was just laughing at the Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode where they go to the Barrel Museum.
So Pinkerton was this part I couldn't really find anywhere else to fit in, so I just put it here. He was a staunch abolitionist, and as early as 1844, so 2 years after he moved to the U.S., he was involved in local abolitionist movements. His home was also a stop on the Underground Railroad. In 1858, abolitionist John Brown, who was the man who attempted to incite a slave rebellion at Harper's Ferry. So John Brown freed 11 slaves in a raid in Missouri, and Pinkerton assisted in getting them to Canada. In 1859, he supplied clothing and other goods to John Brown, including, potentially, the suit that Brown was hanged in following the events of Harper's Ferry.
Nice.
So, like I said, I didn't know where else to stick that, because with how the rest of this is organized, none of that fit. So this was one of those things where I just threw it in because it made more sense. But I just wanted you to have, like, this man is very complicated, and so I just wanted to introduce one facet of him as early as I could. So, back to the 1840s. He was trying to save money by making his own materials for the barrels that he made, and he found an island in the middle of the Fox River that had the kind of wood that he needed. That or it just had, like, a lot of wood because it was, like, a deserted island. I'm not really sure. Sorry, I'm gonna have to stop a lot to, like, breathe more than normal. Okay, so when he got to the supposedly deserted island, he found signs of habitation. And knowing that there were counterfeiters working in the area, he reported what he'd seen to the local sheriff. I'm assuming that there was, like, counterfeiting paraphernalia around. He didn't just see, like, a camp and was like, it's the counterfeiters! Like, I'm assuming there was something else there, but I don't know.
Look, a bunch of fancy pens and fake money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, because, like,
What kind
the way
of
it was...
counterfeiting?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. It just said counterfeiting. I don't know. And so, with this information and with Pinkerton's assistance, local authorities were able to arrest the counterfeiters. So not only did he tell the authorities, he was like, I am also going to help you capture them. And they were like, okay, cool, we'll do that. Because apparently that was a thing you could do in 1848. This gained him some local celebrity, and he was made a deputy sheriff for Kane County after this. And then in 1849 or 1850, he became Chicago's first police detective. The years in this early part of it are kind of fuzzy. But yeah, he was Chicago's first police, like, detective. Not the first police officer, but the police detective. The first person to, like, actually, like, investigate shit. Like, on a professional level in Chicago. And then sometime in the early 1850s, he partnered with a Chicago attorney named Edward Rucker to form the Northwestern Police Agency, which later became Pinkerton National Detective Agency. So you can go to slide 3. This is their original logo. It says Pinkerton's National Detective Agency in the shape of an eye, and then in the eye is another eye, and then underneath it says "We never sleep."
Isn't that where the term private eye came from?
Yes,
Was
it
from
is.
the Pinkertons?
Yes.
Okay.
That is one of my fun facts later on, so.
Well, sorry I ruined it.
No, I figured one of you knew it and would bring it up, so it's fine. It's not like...
See,
Well,
I think
the
this
eyes
is
gave it
why I
away.
was like...
Yeah.
Well, yeah, also that. But I think this is also, like, why I was like, did Shannon tell me about it? Or did I just read that fun fact, like, 2 nights ago in the middle of the night, and I'm just, like, fever dreaming that this conversation happened? Because I definitely read that fun fact, like, literally 2 nights ago. So
I didn't tell you that. No, I did not tell you that.
But yeah, I couldn't remember if you had told us you were doing the Pinkertons or what. But yeah,
I did,
so.
yeah. I told you that whenever we last recorded, which was like 3 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, so my brain's a whole hot mess. But anyway,
fine.
here
So
we
it's
go.
fine. Yeah. So yeah, he formed the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. Allen's brother Robert had formed a business called Pinkerton & Co. in 1843-ish. It was originally a railroad contracting business. My R's are even worse today, guys, because I can't talk. But, so he eventually was like a contractor for railroads. I don't know what he did, but that was like his business. But then it developed into a railroad detective agency? Question mark? It's so fuzzy. Like, I don't know. So this
They
next...
couldn't decide what they wanted
Can I
to
ask
be.
a quick question?
Yes, you can.
Are you going to talk about Abraham Lincoln in this?
A little bit, yeah. Actually, no, a lot of it, yeah.
A little bit.
Specifically,
No,
Abraham
a lot.
Lincoln in Baltimore?
yes, I'm going to talk
Okay,
about
then I'll
Abraham
shut
Lincoln in
up.
Baltimore. Yes,
Cool.
we're going to talk about that quite a bit.
Shut the mouth of my mouth.
No, you're good. So this next part is a quote from Legends of America. Robert Pinkerton had also secured a number of contracts with Wells Fargo to provide guards on stagecoaches. Robert's business grew so rapidly that he hired several men as railroad and stagecoach detectives and guards. When Allen Rucker's business dissolved a year after it was formed, Allen joined his brother Robert in his already established company, and the name was changed to the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. The quote-unquote new company provided a variety of detective services from private military contractors to security guards, but specialized in the capture of counterfeiters and train robbers, end quote. So that was like their origin story. So like he kind of had a detective agency and then it fizzled out, and then he joined up with his brother's railroad contracting business that already existed to fill a gap that they saw, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then this is just a weird little side note that I thought was interesting because it's history drama, so I thought it was interesting. A historian named Frank Morn wrote in his book, The Eye That Never Sleeps, A History of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, that, quote, by the mid-1850s, a few businessmen saw the need for greater control over their employees. Their solution was to sponsor a private detective system. In February 1855, Allen Pinkerton, after consulting with 6 Midwestern railroads, created such an agency in Chicago, end quote. So that is not the same origin story as what is normally put about. Normally, it's like we want to provide security for railroads because this was like the era of train robberies and stagecoach robberies. They were not formed to spy on employees. And so this is also the only firm date of the founding of the agency that I could find. Most sources just said that it was founded in the 1850s. And like this ignores Robert's involvement. And so I was like looking into this a little bit more because I was like, that doesn't match with literally every other source. And I found a review for right after that book was published, and it was scathing.
Oh, God.
So it called it a, quote, pedestrian, poorly written, researched, and conceptualized study.
I love any time that they call something pedestrian,
I
because
know.
you just know it's like the worst thing that has ever happened.
Yeah, so this view of the founding is probably incorrect, but I did just want to throw it in here because it's academia drama, so I thought it was funny. And so, just with them being a detective agency, there were a few other detective agencies at the time, but they didn't have great reputations. The Pinkerton Agency was the first to establish, like, flat uniform fees. I guess a lot of other agencies, their fees were, like, all over the place and you never knew how much you were going to have to pay. They also employed more respectable practices. I don't know what that means. That's just what it said. There's also the issue with police agencies in general at the time. Like, police forces at that time were often small, corrupt, and unwilling to follow suspected criminals outside of their own jurisdictions. So many people felt that the police were not effective. Duh. That's, obviously still a thing now. And then many of these other detective agencies worked to supplement existing police forces, which mostly existed in larger cities. So most of these other, like, rival detective agencies, they were basically, like, stand-ins for the cops in, like, big cities like Chicago or New York. What Pinkerton decided to do was to focus on more rural problems, such as train robberies and outlaw, like, bounty hunting. So they had a different market than these other detective agencies. And then I wanted to introduce her here. So the Pinkertons also hired the first female detective in the United States in 1856.
Yeah.
So if you can go to slide 4, her name was Kate Warne, and that's Warne. That kind of is important later. She was about 23 years old, and she was a widow. So she walked into the agency in Chicago to answer a newspaper ad. Pinkerton assumed that she was looking for clerical work and was surprised that she said that she wanted to be a detective. So Kate was able to successfully argue that having a female detective would be incredibly useful, as a woman could much more easily infiltrate female-dominated spaces that would be closed off to men. Now we are going to move on to the Civil War. So if you can go to slide 5, these pictures are just so funny to me because they're just so awkward looking on... Hannah, slide 5, you're on the wrong slide.
What?
Go back one slide to the one with Abraham Lincoln. I don't know why they just look so awkward to me. These pictures are just...
They were like, Lincoln, you need to turn this way. And Lincoln, you need to turn this way. Stand as stiff as possible.
He looks
Mr. President, try to relax.
He looks like a doll that they just shoved in, like a mannequin. He's so straight. His arms are, like, perfectly straight. It's just, I don't know why. These photos were just cracking me up. So
yeah, they were like, everybody look in a different direction.
Yeah, I don't know why.
It'll be dramatic.
I just thought these, because they're just so awkward. I just thought it was so funny. So the Civil War officially began in 1861, and the Pinkerton Agency was heavily involved in assisting the Union. So Pinkerton himself was the head of the Union Intelligence Service for the first 2 years of the war. I'm not quite sure of the chain of events here, but I think a huge part of the reason why he was given this job was because the agency uncovered an assassination attempt against Lincoln in 1861. So this is where, Hannah, we're talking about Lincoln and Baltimore.
Yes.
Yeah, so that year, the agency had been hired by a railroad owner to investigate secessionist activity and threats of damage to the railroad in Maryland. While investigating this, the agents, including Kate Warne, uncovered a plot to assassinate Lincoln, who at that point was still only president-elect. He hadn't been inaugurated yet. So Warren was able to pose as a Southern Belle and infiltrate the secessionist meetings to get more info, and she was the one who confirmed that there was, in fact, an assassination plot. So at the time, Lincoln was traveling from Springfield, Illinois to Washington, D.C. via train. He planned several stops at notable cities along the way, and he had published his route, like, in newspapers and stuff, so that along the way, if people wanted to come out and see him, they could, because it's the 1860s, and what is security? It's fine. So this is a quote from Wikipedia. The plot was this: just as Mr. Lincoln would be passing through the narrow vestibule of the depot at Calvert Street Station to enter his carriage, a row or fight was to be got up by some outsiders, to quell which the few policemen at the depot would rush out, thus leaving Mr. Lincoln entirely unprotected and at the mercy of a mob of secessionists who were to surround him at that time. So basically, they knew Lincoln was going to have to walk through, like, the super narrow hallway, and they were just going to attack him while he was walking through the super narrow hallway at this train station.
Sure.
So I'm really cutting down on details here, but basically, Warren and Pinkerton were able to inform Lincoln's team of the plot, and they changed the travel plan to avoid it. So This change involved a disguised Lincoln taking an overnight train. What?
Do you have a description of the disguise that Lincoln wore?
I don't know.
Do you mind if I look one up? Because
That's
it's
fine.
hilarious.
I think it is.
Oh,
just think I forgot to put it in here. Lincoln was wearing a disguise. Warren accompanied him, and it said that she stayed awake for the entire trip, and that this inspired the agency's slogan, "We never sleep." So there's that. Do you have a description of the disguise before I move on?
Looking for it.
Okay.
Basically, he dressed like a senile old man, and Kate
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
"This is my brother. He's crazy."
Yeah.
And then they put him on the train and like had him wrapped up in like furs and a beaver cap, and they were like, "Don't touch him. He's insane."
Yeah.
And that's how they got him through Baltimore.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, and then this next one's just another fun fact. According to a Washington Post article, the code name, so they had code names, obviously, for like telegrams and stuff. The code name for Pinkerton / the agency / the agents was Plums, and the code name for Lincoln was Nuts. So the telegraph confirming the success of the operation just said Plums has nuts. Which I thought was hysterical. So Warren's success inspired Pinkerton to hire a bunch of female detectives, and Warren was put in charge of them. So this ended up being, the Pinkertons ended up, they had like the first branch of female detectives hired by their agency. So, following this escapade, the Pinkerton Agency was basically hired by the Union to be spies. Warren could easily infiltrate Southern social gatherings, which gave her a lot of information. Other agents worked undercover as Confederate soldiers and sympathizers to gain information. Pinkerton himself nearly got caught in Memphis in the summer of 1861, but he was able to escape. And then, Pinkerton's job was the head of the Union Intelligence Service. So he hired the first African-American Union intelligence agent, a man named John Scobell. And then Pinkerton's successor, Lafayette Baker, paved the way for this unit to become the U.S. Secret Service. So the agency that Pinkerton headed up became the Secret Service later on. There was a lot of political bullshit that basically led to Pinkerton only being in charge of this unit for the first 2 years of the war. And then after he got fired / let go / voted out, I don't honestly remember how exactly it happened. I think that Lincoln got like a new Secretary of State or something. It was a whole thing. So anyway, he was only in there for 2 years. After he got pushed out of the Union Intelligence Service, the Pinkerton Agency went back to investigating train robbers, which began a series of hunts for several now legendary Western outlaws. So these included the Reno Gang, the Wild Bunch, and Jessie James, and we're going to go into these a little bit here. So the Reno Gang, if you can go to slide 6, they were led by two brothers named Frank and John Reno. They carried out the first 3 peacetime train robberies in U.S. history. I didn't realize that there had to be a differentiation between peacetime and wartime train robberies, but here we are.
Oh, I'm going to send you a video here in a minute.
Okay. And then with the Reno Gang, Pinkerton agents were able to capture many of the gang members in 1868. If you can go to slide 7, this is the Wild Bunch. This was Butch Cassidy's gang. It was, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And a bunch of other people, but no one knows any of their names as well. So I don't think the Pinkertons actually captured anyone from this gang, but they made their lives hell. So, they were involved in their capture. And then, I don't want to say finally, because there were other ones, but these were the 3 big ones. The last one we're going to focus on is Jessie James. So if you can go to slide 8, that is Jessie James. So this whole thing was a colossal failure for the Pinkertons. So the agency was hired by express railroad companies to track down Jessie James and his gang. So James and the gang, they got a lot of support from former Confederate soldiers in Missouri, so they were able to elude the Pinkertons fairly easily. An agent named Joseph Witcher attempted to infiltrate a farm owned by an associate of Jessie James. He was found killed, and then 2 more agents were killed in quick succession. So at this point, Alan Pinkerton himself took this on as like a personal vendetta. So on the night of January 25th, 1875, he staged a raid on the James homestead. So they threw an incendiary device into the home that James and his associates were like hiding in. I don't know what kind of incendiary device. That's just what every single source said.
Dynamite.
Probably.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's like what they were into at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, whatever they threw into the home, it killed James's 8-year-old brother and wounded several of his associates. I think one of them lost an arm.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's dynamite.
Yeah, probably. Pinkerton later said that it had been like a local who was helping them who threw the bomb, but who the fuck knows. So locals were outraged at this because they literally killed a child, and like that doesn't end well no matter what.
No.
And this is a quote from somewhere, probably Wikipedia, because I didn't put where. The Missouri State Legislature narrowly defeated a bill that praised the James and younger brothers, and the younger brothers were like part of their gang, and offered them amnesty. So this was such a fuck up that the state of Missouri almost basically pardoned Jessie James for everything he had ever done.
Oh my god.
Like, it was really close.
That is something Missouri would do.
Yeah.
Right.
I know. And so, in the end, at least in the end for Jessie James, the man who killed Jessie James may have been working with the Pinkertons, but that hasn't been confirmed. But yeah, the whole thing with Jessie James was, like, one of the biggest failures of the Pinkerton Agency, at least from, like, Alan Pinkerton's point of view. There are other incidents that I think are also failures, but he probably did not think so. And then this is just kind of the last info I have on Kate Warren. So in some other cases, she was sent to Mississippi to investigate a bank robbery / murder. They had a suspect, but not enough evidence to put him in jail. So she befriended the suspect's wife, who then confessed to Kate that her husband had committed the crime, and she told her where all the money was stashed. So he got arrested for that. And then, yeah. Another of Kate's investigations involved a man who was concerned that his sister was trying to poison him, and she posed as a fortune teller to uncover, like, what all was going on. I want to note, there were some sources that said that Kate was Pinkerton's mistress. I don't know that for sure. I'm not saying it places a bad moral judgment on either of them if that is true. I don't know if that is true. So I don't want to say one way or another. And then she died of lung congestion, which was probably pneumonia, at the age of like 33 or 34. She was super young. And then she's buried in the Pinkerton family plot, and her last name is misspelled on her tombstone.
No. Jesus.
That may have been intentional, just because they were trying to, like, hide her, because, like, a lot of people hated the Pinkertons.
I mean, I guess, but still.
I know, but still. But yeah, that's it on Kate Warren, unfortunately. I wish she could have done more, but, like, how fucking cool is that? Like,
I want to be her.
Dude, she's pretty much single-handedly saved Lincoln.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she's the one who uncovered the plot. I'm pretty sure she planned the new route that they took. I'm pretty sure that she planned that entire thing. Yeah. It's literally because of her.
Yeah, like, she's cool.
Yeah, it's literally because of her. So
Pinkerton's but she's cool.
Yeah, well, now we're going to get to a whole lot more about why they're because we're going to talk about strike breaking now.
Yay!
No! Yeah! So you can go to slide 9. This is just a picture of general discontent at a strike. Because I needed a picture. So basically, during the 1870s...
You should have just put Linda Belcher chanting.
I should have.
Because she loves to chant.
Oh, I should have.
Oh, I shouldn't make you laugh. I'm sorry.
It's fine. I'll survive. Yeah. Basically, during the 1870s through the 1930s, the Pinkerton Agency was consistently hired by companies to investigate and bring down labor unions and break strikes. So the agency was not the only one doing this at this time. Like, most detective agencies were doing this at the time. But they became the most famous, and they're still the most well-known detective agency, like, ever, I think. Also, I really should have had that flow better. So the Pinkerton Agency still exists, by the way. They have a website.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, they function differently than they used to. We'll get into it later.
Hopefully. Oh,
So,
God.
the Pinkerton website has literally no mention of its strike-breaking activities.
I wonder why.
Literally zero. Because they have, like, a timeline. And so, like, I went through it to try to find, like, stuff to focus on, and I got to there's just this big gap during this time period. And I was like, that's weird. And so, like, I noticed that.
That's not suspicious at all.
No, not at all. And then when I was reading that Teen Vogue article, they also noticed it, and they reached out to the agency for comment on why it wasn't there, but they never answered. So yeah. And then this is one of the sections that's really hard. It was hard for me to do chronologically, so I'm just focusing on, like, individual events instead. But first, I want to explain what exactly it was that the Pinkerton agents were doing in these instances, because I feel like me just saying strike breaking isn't, like, helpful. So basically, there would be some kind of a company. Usually it was a mine, because just imagine, like, a coal mine, some kind of industrial company of some kind would have a trade union, and there would be some kind of a dispute between the company and the union, and this would lead to a strike. The company would then hire individual people or agencies to become strike breakers, and these are also called scabs, who would work to keep the company running in defiance of the strike. So in the case of the Pinkertons, they were often also hired to infiltrate the union itself and pass information back to the company leaders. Sorry.
It's got that black lung going on.
Yep. I'm going to start that over. So in the case of the Pinkertons, no, I'm not. Hang on.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm
No, I
laughing
know.
with you.
You're fine. I knew this was going to happen. Okay.
Do you have water?
I'm drinking water.
Okay, good.
I'm good. I got water. It's just, this is the most I've talked in like a week, so.
Whisper. ASMR podcast.
Okay.
Pinkerton.
Okay. I'm going to have to cut that. You know that, right?
No, leave it in.
No, please keep it.
Okay. Okay. So. God damn it. In the case of the Pinkertons, they were often also hired to infiltrate the union itself and pass information back to the company leaders, who would then use that information to negotiate in bad faith or even get the union disbanded. Goddamn. Okay. So the Pinkertons were involved in a shit ton of labor disputes, many of which turned violent and deadly, because that was what happened. And I want to focus on a few of them here. So the first one is the Molly Mcguires. So if you can go to slide 10.
Woohoo! My boys
This
up
is
in the
a drawing
mountain.
of the Molly Mcguires. So the Molly Mcguires were a secret society that were based in Ireland. Was based in Ireland. They were activists among Irish American and Irish immigrant coal miners in Pennsylvania. I'm sure they did other things, but that is what we are focusing on here. So this next huge chunk is a quote. It's all from the History Channel website that I'm referencing. When the Civil War broke out and miners were drafted to join what they perceived to be a rich man's war, they began to rebel. Coffin notices threatening death allegedly penned by Molly Mcguires were delivered to mining supervisors and scabs who planned to fill their roles during strikes. And as working conditions worsened in the 1870s, the violence escalated. In all, 24 mine foremen and supervisors were assassinated. In 1873, Franklin B., I guess it's Gowan, might be Gowan, I don't know, president of the Reading Railroad, hired the Pinkerton Detective Agency to infiltrate and destroy the Molly Mcguires, whose union organizing became an impediment to increasing railroad profits. Using the alias James McKenna, native Irishman James Mcparland spent 2.5 years living alongside the coal miners, eventually gaining their trust. Despite the conflict of interest, Gowan served as the chief prosecutor during the subsequent trials. Based almost entirely on Mcparland's testimony, 20 men were sentenced to death, 10 of whom were executed on June 21st, 1877, also known as Black Thursday. So that's all from the History Channel. So yeah, they got native Irishmen, specifically James Mcparland, who he comes up again later, to become friends with these men, and then 10 of them were killed because of this.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Traitors.
And then,
bastards.
Yeah. And then there is also debate as to whether the Molly Mcguires were actually an organized group, at least to the extent that Gowan alleged that they were, which I don't understand how you could be the president of a railroad and then also be the prosecutor for strike for, like, violence committed to your own railroad. Like, what the fuck? But okay.
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
No, it doesn't, but...
Well, Irish people aren't people, so just remember that. In America.
Yeah, that's true.
Phrase that.
That's, yeah.
Until,
that's
like,
true.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Haymarket. You can go to slide 11. This is a drawing of the Haymarket Riot. So
That one was great, too.
this incident is very complicated. I might do an entire episode on it if I feel like torturing everyone. I'm keeping it to the bare minimum amount of context I can so that I can focus on the Pinkerton involvement while still making sense. So, on May 4th, 1886, a bomb was thrown into the crowd at a peaceful labor demonstration in Chicago. We have no idea who actually threw it. It could have been strikers, it could have been cops, it could have been just a random passerby. We have no idea. So this resulted in the deaths of 7 police officers and at least 4 civilians, and dozens more were wounded. So this led to a big anti-union sentiment to take hold. I'm still not sure why. I think that a lot of people at the time thought that a union member had thrown the bomb, but I'm not 100% sure. Or maybe they just thought because this was done at a labor organization, therefore it was the union's fault. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So people began... on top of that, people began believing that the bombing was the result of an anarchist plot, because it's the 1880s and that was a big thing.
Sure.
Yeah. So 7 men who were accused of being anarchists were arrested, even though there was literally no evidence linking them to the attack. At the trial, it emerged that Andrew Johnson, a detective for the Pinkerton Agency, had infiltrated the group and claimed that the men had planned the attack. The result of this trial, based mostly on Johnson's testimony, sent 4 men to the gallows. I will say, it was a show trial. Like, everybody knew the outcome whenever they went into it. The judge openly showed hostility towards the defendants and failed to maintain basic courtroom etiquette and rules.
Oh my God.
And then the jury had openly expressed prejudice against the defendants. Which,
Great.
Yes.
That jury selection, it's like, so what do you think? Oh, I hate him, we should kill him. Okay, cool, you're jury number 4.
Yeah, that's literally what happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of the opposite of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, where the judge was basically acting as a second defense attorney, which is a separate issue that we don't need to get into right now. But it's a similar problem, just on the opposite side.
It's so crazy how all these privileged white boys get all of their shit overturned because white judges like them so much.
I know, so weird.
Because they have such good potential for their future.
Yeah, because they're rapists and murderers. It's so...
I wouldn't
so
want
much
this
potential.
one decision they made to ruin their life.
He
One
killed some
decision
people, it's
of
fine.
killing a bunch of people.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's cool. It's
Yep.
fine.
So,
Anyway.
after the show trial, like I said, 4 men were sent to the gallows. 7 years later, this is a quote from Teen Vogue. The Illinois governor pardoned the 3 living Haymarket anarchists after identifying the police and Pinkertons as unreliable narrators. What a motherfucking shock.
Wow.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Literally, the Pinkertons started off strong with the founder and
I
Kate,
know.
and then went downhill so hard and so fast.
I know.
They were just like, we did some great things.
We peaked.
But,
Well,
bye.
and like, this is what I meant when I said that Alan Pinkerton was complicated. He was still like in charge of the Pinkerton Agency for most of this.
What?
Yeah, we get
he was
into it
dead.
later.
Done.
Not yet.
Yeah, sure,
Well,
I assumed he was
he-
dead.
He may have been dead at the, I don't remember exactly where. He may have been dead at the point of Haymarket, but he supported the Pinkertons being strikebreakers. Like, he was the one who started that. So,
What?
No,
Yeah.
Not cool with that.
yeah.
I guess
we'll get
people
into it.
contain multitudes, but like,
I know.
in my head, an abolitionist cannot be also a
I
strikebreaker.
know, right? Like, I know. We get into it later. Yeah, back to Haymarket. So, with this pardoning, the rest of this is a quote from Wikipedia. More specifically, the governor stated that the 3 remaining defendants were victims of hysteria, packed juries, and a biased judge. No shit. And noted that the state has never discovered who it was that threw the bomb which killed the policeman, and the evidence does not show any connection whatsoever between the defendants and the man who threw it. Again, no shit. Governor Altgeld also faulted the city of Chicago for failing to hold Pinkerton guards responsible for repeated use of lethal violence against striking workers. So, so this was, like, the Illinois governor, which historically has not been, like, the least corrupt system we could have, is openly reprimanding the Pinkertons for being lethal against striking workers. So, like, that's a problem. So, now we're going to talk about the homestead. I don't know if riot is the right word. So you can go to slide 12. This is a drawing from Homestead. So this began on July 1st, 1892. And this is, again, a quote. I quote Teen Vogue a lot. It was a really good article. So steel workers at Robber Bear and Andrew Carnegie's steel mill, fucking Andrew Carnegie, in Homestead, Pennsylvania, refused
Another
to ratify.
Scotsman.
Yeah. God. Don't even get me started on fucking Andrew Carnegie.
I won't, because I won't shut up either.
Episode.
That is a different episode. So there were steel workers at his steel mill in Homestead, Pennsylvania, refused to ratify a new union contract that cut their wages. So Carnegie's agent, the rabidly anti-union Henry Frick, fired all 3,800 of them and brought in 300 Pinkertons to occupy the property. The workers and Pinkerton detectives fought in a 12-hour gun battle.
Holy shit.
After 3 of their own and at least 7 workers were killed, the Pinkertons surrendered, but the strike ultimately collapsed. In all, about 16 men were killed and about 23 were wounded, which seems like a very small amount for it being a 12-hour gun battle. But okay. And, like, the Pennsylvania militia had to be called in. Like, this was, like, a problem.
Good lord.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was in 1892. So, finally, for this section at least, we're going to talk about Frank Stoinenberg. So, you can go to slide 13. The guy on the left is Frank Stoinenberg. So, he was the governor of Idaho beginning in 1896. And he had labor union support for his first election. So his, like, terms of governorship, that it covered a time period of significant labor unrest, which, like, it was the 1890s. Like, the entire country was in a period of significant labor unrest. It wasn't just in Idaho. So the main thing that really got him was an issue between the Bunker Hill Mining Company and the Western Federation of Miners. So Bunker Hill only hired non-union labor and kept wages lower than other unionized mines in the area. So in April of 1899, members of the Western Federation of Miners destroyed the company's mill. In response, Stoinenberg declared martial law and got federal troops in to control the unrest. So this was seen as a betrayal by his union supporters, and he did not seek a third term in 1900. And if I remember correctly, he kept martial law in place until he left office. So it was about a year that that area of Idaho was under martial law because of this incident.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Hold on. Peppa's claws are in my back. What?
Hi. I'm not laughing at you.
No, you can laugh at me. It was weird. She just climbed up on me. Mm-hmm. Now I'm afraid she's gonna bite me. I don't like this position I'm in. I don't like... Hey! She bit me. Hold on. 1 second, please.
You're fine. I want to drink more water anyway. Ugh. I'm actually doing better than I thought I would, so.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do during yours, but.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
So. Stoinenberg, yes. Governor, betrayed the union, didn't seek a third term. 5 years later, so in 1905, he was killed by a bomb outside of his home. So, a man named Harry Orchard, which, horrible name. He was a...
Yeah, that is a terrible name.
It's a horrible name. He was a former miner and a former member of the Western Federation of Miners. He was arrested for the crime. So, the investigation was led by Pinkerton agent James Mcparland, who gave the sham testimony earlier. Remember him? Yeah? Or no, he infiltrated the, I put the wrong information. He infiltrated the Molly Mcguires. That was what it was. So he's the guy in the picture on the right with the fantastic mustache. So, yeah, he led the investigation here. So this is a quote.
He looks like
from...
a mix of a bunch of different presidents. Like, he looks
He
a little bit Roosevelt, a little bit Taft. He's got...
He really does.
I don't know.
There's a little bit of Ford in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the hairline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a quote from Wikipedia. Orchard at first claimed innocence, but after solitary confinement and intense interrogation by Mcparland, Orchard signed a 64-page typewritten confession detailing
Jesus
years
Christ.
of being a paid assassin and dynamiter, which I did not know as a word, for the WFM, which is the union. Orchard... That's
a lot.
Yeah. Orchard claimed he was hired to kill Stoinenberg by leadership of the WFM, and he had been in previous jobs that resulted in at least 17 other deaths. Orchard said his orders Orchard said his orders for the killing of Stoinenberg came from Big Bill Haywood, General Secretary of the WFM, Charles Moyer, President of the WFM, and George Pettibone, a labor activist who had a prior conviction related to an 1892 labor dispute in Coeur d'Alene. I'm losing the ability to speak. We're almost done. This is going to be fun.
I would like to make 2 comments really quick.
Yes.
1, Big Bill, whatever the fuck his name was, is definitely a used car salesman.
Yes.
And 2, dynamiter should be spelled like might, M-I-G-H-T-E-R.
It should, yes.
Because that would be so sick. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Continue.
Thank you. Okay. So at Mcparland's urging, the 3 were arrested in Denver in February 1908 and hurriedly extradited to Idaho for the trial. This is where the timeline gets very confused, because Wikipedia says the men weren't arrested until 1908, and then the literal next sentence says that the trial started in 1907. So I don't actually know when this happened.
Maybe they were building a case?
I don't know.
But
you can't start doing that until after someone's arrested.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't, because literally it said the trial started in the next sentence. I think also there may have been more than one trial for different people. I couldn't, to be fair, I read the one Wikipedia article and didn't look into it that much more. So the trial began in either 1907 and 1908. I'm not really sure. I do know Clarence Darrow was the lead defense attorney, the same guy from the Leopold and Loeb case.
Oh.
And the Scopes Monkey trial, like probably the most famous defense attorney of the 1900s. So I also know Orchard pled guilty. So he was never on trial. He was given a sentence of life in prison, which, like, technically he was sentenced to death, but it was commuted to life, so he was sentenced to life in prison. And he also testified at the trial I'm talking about right now, so I think that this trial was for the other 3 men, but then sometimes it talks about different trials and how they were acquitted at different times. I don't know. So, it's just a hot mess and a half. This is a quote from Wikipedia. On the witness stand, Orchard repeated his written confession, admitting to years of setting bombs for the WFM. He was then cross-examined by defense lawyers for 26 hours, spread out over a week's time. It's Clarence Darrow. He's gonna do that. That's what he does.
It's Clarence Darrow. Come on.
That's what he does.
How do you not know that, Shelby?
Pop culture references with Shannon.
He was very, very thorough.
Yes.
That's a word for it.
Yeah. In addition to Orchard, the prosecution presented 80 more witnesses to corroborate Orchard's description of numerous attacks. Darrow and the defense team called over 100 witnesses of their own. Closing arguments lasted 2 weeks, the most talked about of which was by Darrow. Because, again, it was Clarence Darrow. That's what he did.
Jesus. That just feels excessive.
Shannon,
He
you should
was,
be
like,
his, advertising.
Probably necessary, but, like, so
like,
excessive.
Clarence Darrow is, like, my legal Nikola Tesla, if that makes sense.
You should be his marketing person. Clarence
really
Darrow.
should.
It's what he does.
It really, yeah. He put a lot of stock into closing arguments, like a lot more than a lot of lawyers do even now. Like, he really saw closing arguments as, like, I don't know.
I mean, I would think
Mic
they're
drops.
kind of important.
They are really important, but he kind of saw them
Mic drop.
not as, like, the most important, but he didn't slack off on closing arguments, which, like, some attorneys do, and especially at the time. And he liked to hear himself talk. So, like...
He liked to be thorough.
He did.
It's what he did.
So, regardless of how these trials actually happened, or if there was more than one, I'm still not sure. All 3 of these other men were acquitted, which is good, because I don't think they were actually involved. So, Orchard actually stood by his testimony and his confession for the rest of his life. So even though it is, like, kind of implied that Mcparland kind of, like, beat it out of him, he stood by it. Like, he never retracted it or anything. And there was evidence that he did have a personal vendetta against Stoinenberg. So, like, yeah. It's just the involvement of Mcparland makes it look fishy, but I don't think it actually was.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, the Pinkertons had so many other, like, strike-related things, because they did this for, like, 60 years. Like, this was mainly what they did.
And then
For
they
a
took
very
it all
long
off
time.
their website.
Yeah, no, it's not on the website.
And they were like, don't worry about it. Remember the Baltimore plot? Wasn't that cool? Anyway,
that was
moving
so
on.
great. Yeah. So they continued with this. They did so many others. Those were just, like, the biggest ones that I could find, like, quickly. So they continued with this until the late 1930s. So, between 1936 and 1941, there was a Senate committee called the Fallet Civil Liberties Committee. It started looking into how the National Labor Relations Board was investigating methods used by employers to avoid collective bargaining with unions. So basically, the way labor law works, it's not like normal law where, like, you go to court and then you get a case and then that influences, like, a bunch of other cases. The NLRB, like, kind of controls labor court, if you want to call it that. And the problem is, in my opinion, it's a problem, because the people who run the NLRB are appointed by the president. So every 4 years or 8 years, we get new people in charge of the NLRB. And so then every 4 or 8 years, we get very different rulings coming out of the NLRB.
Ugh,
it's
sucks.
a mess. I took labor law. I fucking hated it. It's so confusing. It's not consistent. It's horrible. But between 36 and 41, the NLRB was looking into what employers were doing at this point, because employers were trying to avoid collective bargaining with unions, and that is basically like setting up a union, making bargains with union, making contracts with unions, stuff like that, which legally they have to do if there is a valid union in their company. So the NLRB was investigating employers at this time. So I think the rest of this is all a quote from Wikipedia. The subcommittee published exhaustive hearings and reports on the use of industrial espionage, private police agencies, strike-breaking services, munitions and industrial warfare, and employers' associations to break strikes and to disrupt legal union activities in other ways. So as part of this, the committee investigated the 5 largest, like, private detective agencies, which included the Pinkertons, because these 5 detective agencies, plus others, were all doing this activity. It was not just the Pinkertons. It's just, they're the biggest, they're the most well-known, and that's what this episode is about, so they're the ones I'm going to talk about. So,
yes.
Continuing the quote, most of the agencies subpoenaed, including the Pinkerton Agency, attempted to destroy their records before receiving the subpoenas, of course, but enough evidence remained to piece together a picture of intrigue, which that part's a quote, I don't know where from. It was revealed that Pinkerton had operatives in practically every union in the country.
Fucking great.
Yeah, so they had 1,228 operatives in unions.
I love when there's a
Jesus.
spy in my teacher's union.
Yeah. So there were 5 in the United Mine Workers, 9 in the United Rubber Workers, 17 in the United Textile Workers, and 55 in the United Auto Workers that had organized General Motors. So these were some of the...
Okay, see, like, we know what's going on in, like, the auto workers, but what was happening in the textile worker?
Triangle
Community.
shirtwaist factory fire.
Yep, stuff like that.
Oh,
That's why.
yeah,
Worker safety.
you're right.
Yeah, worker safety. I mean, most of these are worker safety. Worker safety,
Yeah,
bad
but
wages,
still.
bad hours, stuff like that. Plus, it's the 30s. we don't really have, like, great labor laws at the time still, so...
I mean,
also,
are they
now
even
we're
great
licking
today?
paintbrushes, so...
Yeah!
Yeah.
Cool. It's great. We're having a good
Yeah.
time.
But yeah, so...
There's a very good book about that.
Yes, there is. But yeah, so these were, like, some of the biggest unions in the country, and they all had Pinkerton spies in them. Like, that's not good, obviously. And that's just the Pinkertons. That doesn't include these other detective agencies. That's just the Pinkertons. So, continuing with this, the committee reported that as late as 1937, its census of working labor spies from 1933 to 1937 totaled 3,871 spies for the period.
Holy shit.
I don't know what period of time this was, but still, that's almost 4,000 spies.
Oh my
That's
God.
a lot of spies.
Yeah.
That is so communist Russia right there.
I know!
It's like having
Yeah.
you go to work and you're like, well, I don't know who's a Pinkerton, and over in Russia they're like, well, I don't know who's NKVD. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
I
That's
know.
crazy.
Let me just not talk to anybody because they might be a Pinkerton.
Keep
Yeah.
your head down.
Yeah. So this is continuing with that quote. Private security firms like the Pinkerton National Detective Agency and Burns, I guess Burns is another agency, were employed to infiltrate labor unions. The committee concluded that espionage was the most efficient method known to management to prevent unions from forming, to weaken them if they secure a foothold, and to wreck them when they try their strength. I know, I'm struggling right now. We're almost done. No, you're fine. The committee also reported, such a spy system places the employer in the very heart of the union council from the outset of any organizing effort. News of organizers coming into a town, contacts the organizers make among his employees, the names of employees who joined the union, all organization plans, all activities of the union. These are readily available to the employer as though he himself were running the union, which is the exact opposite point of a union.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just finally with this, although the inquiry by the committee achieved minor legal resolutions, it failed to achieve any effective regulatory legislation that might have curtailed the worst practices of strike-breaking activities. Despite this, the revelations enraged the public as it brought more attention to the grievances of laborers. So basically, like, they kind of were able to make some laws about this, but, like, legally, they weren't able to do a lot about this for various reasons. Like, there wasn't any, like, good legislation that came out of it, but public backlash was huge. So, in addition to that, there was also the rise of more organized police forces around the country, including the FBI. And so the agency was kind of like, hey, instead of becoming the most hated organization in the country, why don't we shift our focus? And so after this committee kind of finished up with its work, the agency started to move towards private security rather than detective work. And so that's what they do today, or at least that's what they claim to do, which is what we're going to get into. So this is where we're going to do some random fun facts about the Pinkertons as a detective agency, like before they moved into private security, and then we're going to talk about the private security era. So if you go to slide 14, this is Alan Pinkerton on his horse in the Civil War.
What's his horse's name?
I don't know.
I'm looking it
Definitely had to switch to this slide like 10 minutes ago because the dude who didn't have the mustache, his eyes were like staring into my soul.
He has like terrifying eyes. I understand.
And I couldn't have him stare at me like that.
That's fine. So yeah, Alan Pinkerton died. He died in 1884. And then the agency was run by his sons. And then, as we kind of talked about earlier, some of that anti-union work was done while he was still running the show. So, he considered himself to be pro-labor. He just didn't like labor unions. He thought that breaking up strikes actually protected workers more than the strikes themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
I beg to disagree. However, really quick,
I'm
that
gonna
picture's at the
need
Battle
an-
of Antietam, if you were wondering.
Oh, I did not know that. How the hell do you know that?
Because I'm trying to find out that horse's name.
Oh! I was like, do you just know this?
No.
I was like, is this some like knowledge that
I know!
Oh my god.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've acquired a lot of Civil War knowledge recently.
Well, that's the thing. I was like, did Thomas
I
tell
know
you that? Like,
Honestly, that was my first thought. I was like, does she just know where every
I know
battle?
it was Google.
I know. Yeah, that, like you said earlier, Hannah, I personally don't see how you could be an abolitionist and also be anti-union.
Right? What the fuck?
But okay.
To me, those are very conflicting mindsets.
I think what happened is that he became too friendly with railroad owners, and they poisoned his mind against unions, personally, is what I think happened. I don't know if that's true. That's just me wildly speculating, but that's just what I think happened. Also, moving on from that, we don't actually know what he died from. The usual story is that he slipped on the sidewalk and bit his tongue on the way down, which resulted in gangrene.
Ooh, yeah.
Ooh, that's a terrible way to go.
Yeah, but then others think he died of a stroke, which he'd already had one the previous year, so that's definitely possible. Or that he died of malaria, which he had contracted during a trip to the south. And as we discussed during the Donner Party episode, there was a shit ton of malaria in the United States in the 1800s. So, like,
I mean, yeah.
that's also a possibility. But yeah, we just know he did die in 1884. We just don't know how. So,
interesting.
yeah. After his sons took over, the agency grew so large that by the 1890s, it had 2,000 detectives and 30,000 reserve agents, which was more men than the standing U.S. Army at the time.
Oh my god.
Jesus.
It was like, to be fair, it was the 1890s. We didn't, like, have an army, but still. And then, this is a quote from the History Channel. Fearful that the agency could be hired as a private mercenary army, the state of Ohio later outlawed the Pinkertons altogether.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then related to this, there is a federal law that, as far as I know, is still on the books that states that, quote, an individual employed by the Pinkerton Detective Agency or similar organization may not be employed by the government of the United States or the government of the District of Columbia. So this is from the Anti-Pinkerton Act of 1893.
Oh my god.
And it says, anyone who works or worked for any kind of detective agency similar to the Pinkerton Agency cannot be employed by the federal government in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. There are workarounds for that, which we will get into a little bit later. But that law, I think, is still on the books. So if you work for a private detective agency, if those even exist anymore, people listening, you cannot work for the U.S. government after that. Just so people are aware. Like I said, I don't know if this even comes up nowadays, but probably, I mean, the Pinkertons still exist, so, like, probably.
I feel like it usually goes, like, the opposite way, where, like, it's a retired police officer becomes
That's literally
a private investigator.
That is literally what my cousin's husband is doing right now. He literally just he retired a year or two ago. He just founded, like, a private detective company thing.
Yeah.
And so just a couple more fun facts. One, which we already talked about, their logo became the inspiration for the term private eye. And then finally, they created one of the world's first criminal databases. So if you can go to slide 15, I know that picture on the right is, like, super, super fuzzy. I got it from the Pinkerton website, so yell at them, but that was the only, like, example of this that I could find that had, like, detail on it. So they had this thing called the Rogues Gallery. It was a collection of mug shots and case histories that the agency used to research and keep track of wanted men. This is all from the History Channel. Along with noting suspects' distinguishing marks and scars, agents also collected newspaper clippings and generated rap sheets detailing their previous arrests, known associates, and areas of expertise. A more sophisticated criminal library wouldn't be assembled until the early 20th century and the birth of the FBI. So, they did do that, I guess. On top of killing a bunch of strikers. It's fine.
Right, like, you did something.
You did something, but, like, was it good? No. So,
and rogues gallery is still a term that's used.
Yeah, it is. So, moving into 20th century and quote-unquote security work. So, following... I put the search. God, my notes here are a hot mess, and I wrote these when I wasn't sick. Following the switch to private security and protection, the word detective was dropped from the agency's name. They are now just the Pinkerton Agency. So, just as an example of work they claim to do now, in 1962, this is a quote from the Pinkerton website. They did include this on their website. Pinkerton's armed agents were called upon to escort the priceless painting, the Mona Lisa, painted by the Italian artist Leonardo da Vinci, safely across the Atlantic Ocean. They tend to move more towards like white collar security efforts. I don't know what that means. This is a kind of a tangent, but it goes into that Anti-Pinkerton Act earlier, and I fell down a rabbit hole, so I'm taking it all with me. I couldn't find any information about their work during the Cold War. And that makes me really suspicious.
That is suspicious.
Oh, no.
So, as we already discussed...
That is not a time period where you want to
have
erase...
nothing. I know.
Yeah.
So, technically, the government isn't allowed to hire people who used to work for detective agencies. But it was the Cold War, and spying and reporting on people was, like, the thing to do.
The thing to do.
Yeah.
So, like, who better to hire?
To do that? So, it would make sense to me that the Pinkertons would have been involved in... I put that culture. I don't know if that is the right word. But the only thing that I could find, literally the only thing I could find, I found an article from the Social Justice Journal. The article is called From Cowboy Detectives to Soldiers of Fortune, Private Security Contracting and Its Contradictions on the New Frontiers of Capitalist Expansion. It is by Robert P. Weiss. I forgot to put what year it was published. I think it was in the 80s or 90s, though. I could be wrong. So, it says during the Cold War, the Pinkertons added services to protect against domestic and foreign terrorism, sabotage, and executive ransom kidnapping in North and South America. So, like, they did do stuff, but not spying stuff. And so, from what I can find, which I say what I can find, it's literally all just this article. Most of the government work of this type was taken up by a competing agency called Wackenhut. So,
What?
That's this guy's last name, is Wackenhut.
I'm sorry, but name your agency something else.
I just want to rewind for 1 second, too.
Yes.
1 second as... Whoa, oh my god. That was... whatever. My brain short-circuited
sound like
there.
me right now.
Shit, what was I going to say? Oh, it's never a good thing to be in South America right after World War II if that is not where you are originally from.
That's true.
I'm just going to leave that with you.
That's very, very true. I did not think of that. That's very true. They probably were doing some sketchy shit.
Yep, probably.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for bringing that up. I did not think of that. Okay.
Moving on.
So, no, you're good. Thank you. That was helpful information. So, Wackenhut. So, this company was started by a former FBI agent named George Wackenhut. They found this legal loophole that let them be hired by the government. I think what it was that they classified their employees as guards and not detectives. And they had help from a senator in Florida. No, they also had help from a senator in Florida.
Oh my god, of course. Florida got involved.
Exactly.
Look, if there's a loophole to be found,
exactly.
Florida's gonna find it.
Someone in Florida.
Fucking Florida, man.
We'll find it.
And then, this is a quote from that journal article. Old boy networks of retired federal agents were used to gain inside information and influence, especially from among those in government service, eyeing a lucrative retirement opportunity in corporate or private security. By the late 1960s, his fascist uniformed Wacken cops were busy guarding prisons, airports, nuclear test sites, U.S. embassies, and other federal facilities. I know.
That is a sentence. Wow.
That's a brand new sentence, guys.
It's fascist whacking cop.
I know. So, oh my God. Openly, the government hired Wackenhut agents, but potentially behind the scenes, they were also hiring Pinkertons, but there's no evidence of it at all.
Should I please call them by their proper name, whacking cops?
So... yeah, I'm very glad I included that rabbit hole. Okay. I just like...
Whack-and-moles.
The whack-a-moles are guarding the prisons, those fascist pigs.
That's our pet's favorite game. Yuki plays whack-a-mole with Maisie's head all the time.
I know. It's her favorite.
It's so funny. But yeah, like, when I was, like, doing this section, I was like, y'all are skipping a lot of information from that era, guys. Like... yeah, but I couldn't find anything, like, specific about what they were doing in the 50s and 60s. So, I'm not saying they were spying, because I don't want them to sue me. But I'm not saying they weren't spying.
It's all alleged.
It's all alleged. So,
allegedly they were Nazis in South America. Whatever. Or helping them.
Hannah said it, not us.
Allegedly.
Oh, man. So, we're now going to jump to 1999 because that is the next time anything important to them, like, happened, apparently. They were bought by a Swedish security company called Securitas AB in 1999. The agency hadn't been run by an actual, like, member of the Pinkerton family since the 60s, so it's not like this was a huge deal. And officially, they're still doing white-collar security and protection. So if you go to slide 16, that is their current logo. It's just Pinkerton.
That is so 1984.
It really is.
It's, like, painful.
I'm pretty sure that's what they used on one of the covers of 1994.
You have no idea how close you are to the point of what I'm about to tell you.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
So this is where we get into that Teen Vogue article. So Teen Vogue and Vice, which Vice was reporting on the Teen Vogue article, but it included some other stuff. And, like, they were both citing this other article, but they had, like, analyses of it that I thought were helpful. They found some interesting info about the Pinkertons that really calls into question their claims of having moved on from anti-labor work. So first off, in 2018, their agents were called in to handle security during a strike in West Virginia. So there's that. Like, technically they were security. I don't know what all that entails. They weren't strike breaking, whatever. More importantly, in 2020, it was discovered that Amazon had hired Pinkerton agents to spy on warehouse workers in Europe.
Fucking, of course they did. Cool.
Yeah.
Great. I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is all an quote from Vice. So, a trove of more than 24 internal Amazon reports reveal in stark detail the company's obsessive monitoring of organized labor and social and environmental movements in Europe, particularly during Amazon's peak season between Black Friday and Christmas. The documents show Amazon analysts, this is literally the last paragraph, I'm so close. The documents show that Amazon analysts closely monitored the labor and union organizing activity of their workers throughout Europe, as well as environmentalist and social justice groups on Facebook and Instagram. They also indicate, and an Amazon spokesperson confirmed, that Amazon has hired Pinkerton operatives from the notorious spy agency known for its union-busting activities to gather intelligence on warehouse workers. And that is all I have on the Pinkertons.
We live in such a stupid dystopia.
I know!
That's not a good look, Amazon.
Or Pinkertons, like you're trying to say, oh no, we
Right.
just do security. Not in Europe, though.
No, in Europe we hired spies. It's great. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, in Europe we're still hired as spies to spy on striking workers. Yeah, so yeah, that's the Pinkerton Agency. I meant to ask you guys before this what you knew about the Pinkertons before I started, and I completely forgot.
I really just knew that they did bad things, but I didn't really know what they were, and I also knew about the Baltimore plot in great detail, because I think that shit is hilarious.
Yes.
Where Lincoln was like, I'm a crazed old man.
I knew that they were the reason for the term private eye, and I knew that they were a detective agency that did some sketchy things.
Okay, so we at least all knew that they were sketch. That's good. That's a good starting point.
Right.
Like I said, should have asked that earlier, but
It's all good.
Yeah, the fact that I managed to get through this without literally coughing up a lung or forgetting how to speak English completely is a miracle. Yeah, so
only kind of.
Kind of. I said completely. Yeah.
All right.
Any questions or comments?
No.
Just think about the fact that they were in South America after World War II. Just think about it. You don't have to, make a conclusion. I could just be in the land of deep speculation, but, just a thought.
Well, the fact that they were doing, terrorism, anti-terrorism and, anti-kidnapping stuff in South America is fishy. You know?
Yeah, whose terrorism are you talking about?
Yeah.
Which side of the terrorism line are you on?
Yeah, it's fishy. Yeah, I just, like, they would have been great for the, what was that Senate committee? I can't remember the name of the committee. The one where everybody went in, and the McCarthy committee, it had an actual name. I can't remember the name of it now.
The Red Scare.
Hang on, I'm gonna Google it. It was the select committee on...
Don't be a communist.
Oh, there is a... Okay, the January 6th committee is also led by somebody named McCarthy.
Holy
Well,
shit.
That's not helpful, Internet.
Oh, hey, I just watched a really good documentary on that on HBO, I think, called 4 Hours at the Capitol. It was good. Although they gave too much airtime to the Proud Boys, in my opinion. And an organization called Cowboys for Trump, which was fucking hilarious.
Oh, God.
Anyway.
Oh, God. It was the select committee on something. I can't remember. Either way, I feel like if they had been able to, they would have hired the hell out of the Pinkertons. Like, McCarthy would have loved to work with the Pinkertons.
You know, he was probably doing it under the table.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that's all I have. Now I'm looking up Joseph McCarthy.
That's another rabbit hole for another day.
It is. I'm trying to find the name of that committee because it's driving me nuts. Everything has sucked forever. Oh, this was kind of it was the House Un-American Activities Committee.
Right.
Thank you, Wikipedia. That's what it was. Also, I meant to put this in here, and then I got sick for a week and forgot. People don't blame the Pinkertons for this, but they see it as a precursor to, like, our current, like, surveillance state that we live in.
Oh, you know my feelings on that.
Yeah, and, like, a great example of how, like, that is not new. It's just more visible now.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, I meant to put that in here and I forgot. Okay, that's all I have, or else we're going to keep rambling.
Yes.
Our ending is that we have no ending.
No.
And yes, God save the Emperor. I'm glad someone else remembered that. Yay.
Yay, long live the Emperor.
Yay. Okay, goodbye, everybody.
Okay, peace out. Bye. Thanks for listening to The Triad. Our music is by Scott Buckley. Our audio is recorded by our sound engineers, Craig Bott and Audrey Credo.
If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, YouTube, and Tumblr as The Triad Podcast.
We're also on Patreon as The Triad. Currently, all Patreon funds will go towards the cost of hosting the show. Each tier has its own rewards, but every patron receives our undying gratitude. Do you have comments, questions, or stories? Email us at thetriadpod@gmail.com. And thank you again for listening to The Triad, where we're spooky but sensitive.